We've arrived at our blue moon. This is a blue moon. It's a fancy moon. It's the moon it's the bonus moon. Blue moon is a bonus moon for the month of May. And the well is really honestly a moment to dig into our wells, our inner wells, the inner resource, and the idea of a wellspring, a bubbling up, a thing that is inside you that is overflowing for you. Now it's time for you to enjoy your own gifts and talents. Now it's time for you to sit inside the joy of being you. It's kind of like a celebration, but not exactly. It's more of a conscious recognition of how interesting, how joyful, how magnificent it is to be yourself, to be oneself. And right from the get-go, we need to get our animal spirit ally with us. So I'm going to pull a card from my favorite deck to receive animal guidance, and this is the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit by Kim Kranz. And the card that we get for this full moon. Ooh, I was not expecting that. We get Phoenix. So we don't always get magical animals, but this time we did. The phoenix represents the transformation of our past. It doesn't mean running from it, denying it, or burning bridges with rage. The phoenix employs an advanced technique described in yoga as the burning of impurities through practice and dedication, known as tapas. Practice, dedication. The essence of the phoenix is with us when we realize we've been suffering too long and something must change. We take a stand and decide to live consciously instead of being driven by the unconscious mind and its long lists of fears and aversions. At that very moment, the spark of the phoenix is lit, and the great bird helps us burn through our baggage. We no longer run from who we are, what has happened to us, or what we have done. The stuckness and dead weight fall into the ashes, and a lightness and clarity emerge. As the stagnant seed continues to smolder, the phoenix lifts our spirits up, and we begin to recognize ourselves again. There's this thing about needing to do. It's the doing and the being mixed together. It's part of our being, our existing. And it's a little bit like gears are turning. If you have ridden a bike that has changeable gears, which was a big deal when we were kids because we all started off with these bikes where you backpedaled and could brake. And then we graduated into bikes with gears and with handlebar brakes. And so we're in these spiritual bikes with gears, and we're starting to, or maybe it's just me, I just think it's we are learning about changing our gears. And remember when you started to learn about changing your gears and being able to climb a hill without getting off the bike and pushing it up the hill? You could climb the hill by changing the gear into, I guess it was a higher gear. I don't know if you call it higher or lower. Just change the gear and suddenly you can pedal and pedal. You're not making as much ground, but it's a lot easier to pedal. And then when you are on flat ground and you can change your gear and you get more force with every rotation of the pedal, and you can really gain some speed and momentum when your gears are in that situation. Obviously, I don't know enough about bikes to talk about it well, but I think you know what I'm talking about. So the image that I see around all of this is part of our enjoying our own wellspring, enjoying the bounty of it, is learning how to stay with a kind of buoyancy that means we get to enjoy the joy of our own being. And that buoyancy allows us to shift gears. So sometimes we might get to a place where like, ugh, I actually can't move forward here. I'm actually stuck. Like we've got to get off our bike and push the bike. But there's something about accessing the buoyancy of our own joy in a conscious way. And that buoyancy draws us up and down the spiritual gears. How would we talk about those gears? And that forcing ourselves to do things that we really dislike, that really are not aligned with our sense of self and integrity. You know what I mean? Like, I really don't want to go to brunch with Aunt Susie, but I said I would, and she's going to be so disappointed if I don't do this. But meanwhile, there's something that's really off about doing it, and it's simply that, it's like creating more and more karma around, I'm afraid to disappoint this person who is just basically a disappointed person anyway. You can't forever lure them away from their own feelings. And that's a whole aside, right? But coming back to one's own integrity, one's own joy, we can change the gears of our own sense of being centered in our lives and our livelihood, and staying really centered with our buoyancy and our joy. Even when things are hard, we have the ability to keep things moving by staying in the center of our wellspring. Phew, that's it. That's what this moon is wanting to talk about. I'm going to come back around to it. Hi, welcome. Let's begin. I am your host, Anne Headley. This is my podcast, What is Going On Anyway? Recently was talking with a new friend, and I kind of out of the blue said, you're a curiosity slut. And then she said, I think that's the name of your podcast. And we just laughed. And I don't know if I'm ready to call this podcast Curiosity Slut, but what is going on anyway? Subtext Curiosity Slut is appropriate. In this podcast, I take some time every couple of weeks to check in intuitively, imaginally, and creatively with a new or full moon. We're here with the full blue moon in Sagittarius. Then I share that with you, whatever comes up. I use my imagination and my intuition together to tell a story by surfing the present moment. My experience of this sharing is sort of a hybrid of imagination and inspiration, and possibly a very good way of brainstorming future possibilities, future creativities, future worlds together. I hope that this encourages you to look for your own waves of presence that fuel inspiration, intuition, and courage. Ultimately, I hope this becomes an internal revolution of self-worth, which I believe is necessary to usher us into the future collaboration of being here together. I'm always interested in my own and others' experiences of spirituality and the question, even though it might never have an answer, and maybe it's not even the point, but what are we here for? And what is the meaning of life? This is a podcast for intuitives and the intuitively curious. This is for folks who value personal spiritual experiences and ask questions about why we are here, and the meaning of life, even though we know these are unresolvable queries. Welcome. I am so glad you're here. I do really love it when you reach out to me. I have shifted my home of this podcast over to Substack, so I hope you can follow me over there and receive notifications that the podcast is coming out. If you sign up on Substack, you should get an email that says, hey, a new podcast is out. That's my hope for the future, that I have a more stable home base for the podcast to make it easier to keep in touch with you and easier for you to reach out to me, which is really important to find out what is going on for you too, not just me speaking constantly at you, which I like. I actually like that too. So please reach out. Please share the podcast with others. I do sometimes wonder if this is the same for everyone. Let me just say, as long as I can remember, I wanted to know who I was to the world. And as long as I can remember, I don't know if that's really true, but certainly as soon as I moved into schooling, I wanted to know who I was. I could feel myself having that desire through I didn't realize how much school was forming my opinions about how to be in the world. I thought school was one thing and that culture was another thing. And I just didn't see how intermixed the idea of the real hierarchy of our world is embedded in schooling as well. So I really do go back and question why I wanted to be something or wanted to be special. And I know part of it is like, how do I slot myself into white supremacy and the hierarchy of capitalism? How do I find my way of participating in this world that is just this way? Now, I didn't know that it was just that way and that there was any other way of being. I just felt this urgency to be special. And I wanted the world to receive my special. And I know not everybody's like that. Sometimes we hide our special and we don't want anybody to see it. But there is this sense that in this world, you want to have some kind of talent, something to offer the world, some sort of way to focus your life and share it with others. And I thought that the world wanted my kind of special. And I didn't, I was looking all sorts of it. My quest to be discovered felt relentless. Coach after coach, swimming each summer with a new coach. My teachers, gymnastics, dance, even being called into the gifted and talented room. And what was that? Disgusting separation of children into some are taken off to a gifted and talented room. It was a room. And I was a cheerleader. And I think back to the rules and regulations and ways of being. And we were told that cheerleaders were like special citizens. We had to behave in certain ways. I think we were told very specifically we couldn't cuss or be seen kissing boyfriends or it was very strange, the kind of control about who these focuses of female attention were going to be and how they had to be, and then sitting on the sidelines cheering for other sports. It was very strange. I found it all very strange, but I did it. I had to see if I could do it. And I kind of loved how I could feel myself molding into so many different shapes. I could be special like this and I could be special like that. It was like I was desperate to find a way to be extracted into the world. And I don't know if you've done this, but I looked up the definition of capitalism. I'm going to share that with you right now. Capitalism is an economic system where private individuals or businesses own capital goods, and the free market controls the production of goods and services. In capitalism, natural resources are primarily treated as commodities, assets to be extracted, bought, and sold for profit. The system relies heavily on the private ownership of these resources. And simply in contrast, and because we don't have something else to counter capitalism, I just want to say socialism considers natural resources and major industries to be collectively owned, with the community or the state managing them to ensure wealth is distributed equitably and public needs are prioritized. Communism is an advanced stage of socialism where all property, including natural resources, is owned in common by the community, eliminating the concept of private property entirely. Now, if you just hear that, without all of the brainwashing that anything associated with communism is bad, which is deep in American society, just communism is a concept where all property, including natural resources, is owned in common by the community, eliminating the concept of private property entirely. Which I know it's terrifying because we need our private property, we need our space. But then let's take a step back and imagine in socialism, wealth distributed equitably and public needs are prioritized. Just simply public needs are prioritized. And then let's go back and for one quick second and remember capitalism considers natural resources to be treated as commodities, as assets to be extracted, bought, and sold for profit. Sounds like the devil talking to me when I just look at it like that. Maybe there's some other way of considering these concepts. But right now, people and their data are being considered commodities to be extracted. The surveillance state considers people to be commodities. Our data points are sellable, tradable. These AI data centers for why? I mean, there's a lot of why, but a big part of the why of the data centers is to be able to manage all of the data that's coming in, including surveillance data, tracking data. When we get into a conversation around AI, it becomes really tricky because we're not exactly talking about AI. We're not just talking about the technology of artificial intelligence. We're talking about the companies who own the technology have a very specific way of wanting to use the technology. So if we considered AI, if we considered data centers to be publicly owned, we would be having a completely different conversation. All of this incredible fear about where it's going, and then to point that back to just AI, the technology itself, is just looking in the wrong direction because it's the people who own the technology who are able to bypass public demand for these data centers not to be put in their own communities, that they're able to somehow be beyond public discourse and be able to do whatever they want. Very simply, that seems to me to be the bigger problem than the technology itself. Back to me, when I was a youngster, so desperate to find a way to be extracted into the world, so much wanting to be part of this whole system of extracting resources and commodities and people. You see, I couldn't understand my parents' reluctance to push me out into it. They were very reluctant to give me any of their resources to be discovered by any coach or whatever. I chose dance, and that put me right into that highway of seeking talent extraction. And I moved to New York City with the hope of being discovered like so many millions of other young people. Not once did I consider that I could be my own, that I could be for myself first. I mean, really, it's just recently that I have had that sensibility that I didn't have to be extracted. I don't have to be for anyone. Nobody even has to listen to this silly podcast. That I could do this because it feels good. I could be myself and express myself in so many creative ways, including having children and having my kitties and my doggies and all of the creatures that I love to have around me. I could have this life because I love this life, because I love how I interact with this life, not because I'm doing it so somebody else can extract that and somehow give me permission from far away from my center to allow me to continue doing it. Because, it's like if I ever got hooked out there, I'm so far away from my own center. And you can almost see this like a rope attaching to my midline and going out to a hook very far away from me. And that imagine this like tiny trickle of satisfaction or contentment coming back to me. But it goes out to that hook way out there, which might be like an agent or something, say. And then it comes back to me slowly, 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 trickle, trickle, trickle on that little pulley. And I get like a tiny teaspoon of like, ooh, self-worth and contentment. And then the hook goes way out there again. Meanwhile, I have the wellspring inside of me that I can enjoy. And somehow I have this crazy idea in there that somehow it has to be for other people. Well, this moon is saying, oh, sorry, we're just trying this thing out. I don't know. It's just a story we were working through. It was like old stories, other lives, ancient history. And what could that be like if we were living a world of our own pleasure and enjoyment? It sounds like some of the stories, like it sounds hedonistic. And that would be, I would just be living in sin if I was living for my own pleasure. But you know what? Maybe, I don't know. That's where I'm at. So, oh well, all that other programming didn't work so well for me. What if I am my own natural resource? My beauty is my own. Left alone, I'm fine with all of the non-standard, beautiful ways that my body is. I actually like my short attention span. I actually kind of like my lack of drive. I like my laziness. I like waiting until I'm ready to do something. I like feeding myself the delicious treats that I can think up to make or find or have. All that stuff I really enjoy when I'm outside of this sensibility that I have to be something for someone else. And not just like someone else, like a specific someone else, but like the kind of like greater world. And so part of that is like changing my focus and turning it back into just closer to me. This is not revolutionary or, I've had these thoughts my whole life. Like, I don't want to go with the flow of society. I'm other than, but right now is kind of the first time that I've really felt the satisfaction. Like before it was like this sort of like push pull, like, oh, I'm different. Oh, I don't quite fit here. And now I kind of feel a little bit of spreading relaxation. I want to say it's this moon and that like from now on, we will all be free. And I know that's not probably true, but this is like the window is open. The full moon is shining the light onto our ability to see ourselves as our own natural resources that we are dying for. Like we're so thirsty for that water that comes from the center of our being. So I really want to know what the I Ching has to say about this full moon. What could we have as guidance or support or understanding for this full blue moon in Sagittarius, the very end of May? We get hexagram 54. Totally do not like this one. The marrying maiden. Okay, this is the imagery, which is just gross, but a young girl, not yet a woman, comes home to her new husband's house, who's a nobleman of old China. This man would marry his first wife with great ceremony, and she would go to her new home accompanied by a group of female relatives who became second wives. These are the marrying maidens. They're present simply to make relationships easier and have no status of their own. As a marrying maiden, you have accepted a relationship where you come second. Okay, I'm starting to see how I can work with this. You're only here to play a supporting role. You're too junior. You're not ready to exert influence. I think what disgusts me about it is just the idea of, for so long and so long and so long, men just had like, how many wives did they need? They just needed a lot of wives, which I guess I understand. Like, if you can have a wife, you should have a wife. That's like probably one of the best, most wonderful things in the world, to have a wife, especially someone who is trained to serve you. I guess it's not, that's not the kind of relationship that I long for, but I can see why it was a popular idea. Okay, but we're just using this as a concept. So if we are the marrying maiden to our own wellspring, our own inner sanctum, and we are just subordinate to that. So if I am subordinate to my inner joy, then I just don't really have a choice, but I have to make my outside choices centered around my wellspring. I can live with that. And the questions to ask here are, how can you grow into this situation? How can I learn about being subordinate to my inner resources? What does it mean to you to come second? Oh, that actually feels so good, like almost a little bit of like chills, goose pimples. That what does it mean to you to come second to yourself, to your integrity, to your center? How sustainable is this? It's only sustainable if you get nourished by staying close to yourself. It moves to hexagram 40, which is release, which is quite lovely. If nothing could bind you, where would you go? Do you have to? And who says? Which path leads to where you want to be? To release is to liberate, to solve problems, to untie knots. This is nice. The first step towards release is to move southwest, no longer battling on to pursue the mission, but going back to your roots and reconnecting with home and allies. When you know where you're coming from, it becomes a lot easier to be clear about where you're going. Yeah. This is an interesting little note here. It says, this would be such simple advice if only we didn't spend our lives being pulled down paths that lead nowhere, as if by invisible strings. And that is so interesting, because that's exactly what I was feeling when I was saying, I spent a lot of my life trying to be hooked by outside invisible strings. And I understand it kind of innocently that I was looking for stability and support, thinking that I could go out into the world to receive that. But it's ultimately a kind of dispossession, I want to say, that it is a way of of getting out of myself, hoping for some kind of false center, but it's so far away from my real center that it really can pull me too far outside of myself, pull me into almost being a different, sort of like a parallel life or something, like pulling me into being a different person. And right now, returning to the center of oneself, there's a real sense of coming home to oneself and becoming reacquainted. So we become reacquainted with our own self as an ally. It's a really kind of fascinating idea of being there for yourself, being your own best friend, being your own best ally. I have a lot of trouble where I will betray myself. I will very easily, maybe not as much now, but I used to very easily just go off into solving problems for other people, basically, thinking I was anyway, hoping I was, being very codependent, and that hoping that I could solve other people's problems, they would feel better, and then I would eventually earn the right to feel good inside myself. So to flip that on its head, to feel good inside myself, it gives me a real compass to work with, a true guiding. Cornerstone. Yeah. The cornerstone was a word that was coming up for me over and over again. And so it gives us a real cornerstone, which is a solid place to build from, a true cornerstone. Okay. I think we're complete. I think that's it. Happy blue moon to you. I hope some of this landed somewhere for you and gives you that same feeling that I have inside myself, which is a very content. I feel almost like my belly is full, but not like over full, uncomfortable, but I have been fed. So I wish that for you or for anyone who needs it. You can reach out to me through Substack and also through my website, www.annhedley.com. That's ANNHEDLY.com. Thank you for being here. May you be well. May you know peace. And may all beings everywhere, whether known or unknown to us, may they be well and may they know peace.